Hi, this is Dr. Buxton. Welcome to my channel. Today I would like us to go straight into superstructure concrete works, where today we are going to learn about measurements, or you can call it taking off, for superstructure columns. So we'll do the concrete works, columns, and we'll also do how to measure the formwork. So for my new viewers, I want to say that if you would like to catch up with the rest of the items we've been doing, please find all the attached links for the previous videos on the description part. For my returning viewers, this has been a journey, and I want to welcome you so that we continue with the same. So straight, I would like us to do what we've been doing. That is now preparation of bills of quantities. Using what we call the Excel, just a simple Excel. So columns are measured in cubic meters, and what is of essence is how we go about that for us to achieve the estimation or the cubic meters that we want. So first and foremost, if you want to measure the columns, you make what we call a column schedule. A column schedule is a list that is giving you the types of columns that you have, the sizes, and also the numbers, so that you have them well documented on a table that is called the column schedule, and from there you can easily get their volume without having to struggle. So what we'll do, just to the side of your Excel sheet, you make the column schedule so that you have that sort of a table. So this is the column, this is the column schedule. There are a few principles that you also need to remember while doing your estimation or doing your takeoff for the column schedule. So first and foremost, so in your column schedule, there are those items that you need to take into consideration. First of all, you can do what you call an ID. An ID basically is going to symbolize what column are you referring to, in terms of the marks that they are given by the structural engineer. Is it a column C1, is it a C2, is it a C3, and so on. So that is what you can call an ID. And then you can also have what we call as the size. Okay, size basically, if it's they are square columns or they are rectangular columns, you'll be having a length and a width and so on. So all these are going to lead you into calculation of the quantity of concrete that you want, or that those particular columns are made of. Then the other item that you also need, first of all, after you've done the size, I did the size, and you also need the number. So here at the size, I can just do, because I can do two columns this way, and then I merge them, so that once I've merged them, then I have now the length and the width just beneath that particular column. So once I've done so, I'm going to have a length, and I'm also going to have a width of the same. Okay, so if I say, for instance, if I say C1, then I'm going to have its length and its width. And then to the next column, you can have the number of the columns indicated, so that you indicate what is the number of those columns that you are talking about. So we talked about ID, size, number, and then apart from the number, we can also talk about the height. Okay, because now we are talking about the superstructure concrete or superstructure columns, height is also going to be of essence. And how exactly do you read that height, or what you need to have for every for your columns? So we've talked of those items. And of course, we have here the volume. So once you've identified what are now the requisite items to include in your column schedule, then it's also of importance that you know where do you read how do you identify those particular columns. So first of all, once you've identified that, then you'll go to your structural plan. Okay, structural plan precedes now what you have as the architectural plan. So go to your structural plan and look at the items that you have in terms of the columns. So I'll just zoom it in. This is the plan that we are using. For this particular plan, you are able to see the columns have been identified. So we have column C1, C1, and so on. So the best way is for you to count these particular columns in terms of grades. If you look at this plan has got numerous columns, and it also has got grades. So for you to be able to identify them easily without having to repeat the number of columns that you have done, then consider those particular columns as they are appearing on the grades. So I would like to start with a particular grid. For instance, I would like to go with the shorter span. Okay, so the shorter span, let me just drag this down a bit so that I have space as such. So when I zoom it in this way, I'm confident that you are able to see. I would like us to start from grid 1. Okay, so leave alone the one to the outside, the wall. That is now the wall, and it's a perimeter wall or a retaining wall that is going to be considered under external works. So what we are going to consider is from grid A1 H1, and also from grid 1 to grid 10. Okay, looking following into what I'm showing you with my cursor. Sorry. So you want to do that, I'm going to start from grid 1. So at grid 1, just follow the grid upwards, okay, and see which are the columns that you have. All right, so I'm just presenting my Excel sheet alongside the plan so that we enter those items in sequence as they are supposed to be done. So first of all, I'm starting from grid 1 so that you're also able to see. From grid 1, we are talking about column C1. Okay, so we have column C1, and also let's see if we have column there is another C2 that is along grid C1. We have column C2, and then let's see if we have C3 anywhere. I can also see C3 along grid E1. Okay, so this is how we'll handle it. So once you've identified that, first of all, you've already made sure that you know all the columns that you have. That is C1, and you also have C2, and you also have C3. Okay, for the size, we'll fill the size when you go to the details, where you have the details, structural details of those columns. That is where we're going to fill the sizes. Okay, at the moment, we'll start with what you call, we'll go to the numbers. How do you go about that? For us to know the numbers of the columns that we want, first of all, for instance, we're starting with the column C1. So column C1 along grid, let's start from grid 1. So grid 1, you can use what you call, you can use just, because you're not sure exactly how many they are, you can just use the letters. You can use the letters. For this case, if you are using it, if you are counting them by hand, you can use strokes, or maybe when you are just striking them by a pen, you can use strokes. But for now, what resembles that to the closest is the letter I. So I'll use letter I to count them. So from grid 1, I can see there is C1. So maybe let me use, I can be ticking them so that we are sure of what we've done and what we have not yet done. So let me see, from this point, I can see C1, that is a C1 at E1, and there's also another C1 at C1, and then there is also another C1 at B1. So along that grid alone, we have counted three of them, but that are C1. So 1, 2, 3. Okay, then we go to another grid, that is now grid 2. Grid 2, we also have another C1. Okay, and it goes all that way. Actually, there for grid 1 there were only 2, and then grid 2 there are also another 2 for C1. So I'll just add 1 here. Okay, then we go on to at grid 3. There is grid 3. Let me see which this one is. All right, grid 2. So grid 3, there is one here that it's not demarcated, or it's not shown, but looks like a square column, like the one that we have at the boundary. It's not shown which one that is. So we go to grid 4. Grid 4, we have C1, and we have C3. Okay, so there is a C1 and a C3. So C1 will add another one there, then we have also C3, also just one of them. So we go to grid that was grid 4. Then you go to grid 5. Grid 5 you have C2 and C1. Okay, grid 5 we've counted, C2 is 1, and we also have C2, and we also have a C1. So a C1, we add another column. Then we go to grid 6. Grid 6 there is no column. Then we go to grid 7. At grid 7 we have also C2 and C1. Okay, C2 and C1. So C1 is 1, and then C2 is also 1. Okay, so that is that. Then we go to, that was grid 7. Then you go to grid 8. Grid 8 we have C1 and C3. Okay, grid 8 we have C1, another one for C1, and also we have C3. That was grid 8. Then you go to grid 9. The grid 9 there is none. Go to grid 10. Grid 10 there is a C1 and a C1, two C1s for grid 10. C1, there are two of them, 1, 2. Okay, then we go to grid another grid 10. There are also other two C1s. Okay, C1, two of them. So that is 1, that is 2. So once you've done that way, but because you need them in figures, then you count. Okay, so this is that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we have 12 columns for C1, and we have 2 columns C2 and 2 columns C3. Perfect. So once you've done that, then you go to the details. Look for the details of the plan of those particular columns, and the details are indicated here. So look out for column C1. Column C1 is this. The size is 500 by 200. That is C1. Then C2, the size is also it's indicated here, 600 by 200, and also down here it's indicated as 600 by 200. You notice that when you go to the plan, now this is the plan of that particular column. You notice here it's indicated 500 by 200, then here it's 600 by 200. Yet up here there is 500 by 200. So it means there's a discrepancy in terms of what has been written and also what the plan is showing. Okay, plan of the column. So the plan is what carries more weight in terms of precedence and preference when you are carrying out this particular work. So that means you are going to rely on what you have on your plan. Okay, so instead of the 200, instead of the 600 by 200, you will go with 500 by 200. Okay, so that is what we will take. So we'll take here, all of them are 500 by 200. Okay, so all of them are of the same size, and that is what you take. Okay, so that being said, then we go to the height, so that we read what the height of those particular columns are. Now when you are doing the columns, superstructure columns, the height that should be used is from floor to floor. That is what the rule states. Okay, so from floor to floor means, if I'm for instance, I've just zoomed it in, and you can see for this is column C1. There is the 3000 that is coming from the top of ground floor to the top of the first floor. So that is the height that should be used for columns. Okay, and it cuts across. So not unless the other columns are of different height, then that is what we are going to use. You don't need to subtract for the for what you call the slab and so on. So you take it from floor to floor. That is what the rule states, and that is exactly what you need to follow. So in this case, we are taking it that it's from top of ground floor to the top of ground floor to the top of the first floor. Slabs from floor to floor. Please remember that. That is 3000. Okay, so that is going to be the height which should be adopted for all our workings. Okay, so that is 3000. Alright, so we have all that. We've indicated the sizes. We've also shown the sizes, the number, and the height. So what remains is for us to get the volume. For ease of our work, we need this. What we need is we want it in cubic meters. Therefore, we are going to make our work easier by making all these ones that are in millimeters to be in meters. So that one we divide by 1000. We do the same for this, so that this is 0.2. Okay, so we have them all in meters, and then this one also is now going to be 3 in meters. Then you go to the volume. Therefore, the volume is basically length by width, then we multiply by height times the number of the columns that we have. Okay, so that's just a simple formula that we've done, where you get size, which is now the length and the width, then you multiply by the height of that column. Height, you've just seen it there, and then we multiply by the total number of those columns. Okay, so this one gives us the volume of columns for one of the floors, and that is now ground floor. Okay, that is what we've read from our plan. Okay, but because we are doing what we call an assorted bills of quantities, or just a summarized bills of quantities, where we are not going to look into the rest of the items. For instance, we are not going to consider, or rather, I would like us to consider, if it's columns, we consider all the columns all at once. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll simply just have our working showing that this is a ground floor, then we go to second floor, and the rest of the typical floors. Okay, because remember, our house, or the block that we are doing, it's a block that is comprised of let me see, here we have ground floor, first floor, second floor, third floor, and fourth floor. And of course, you can also notice that there are some columns which are going up to the roof floor level. So what we want to do, we've considered the ground floor. Okay, so for the ground floor, it's cutting across from all the columns, column 1, column 2, column 3. They are all having that particular height. Okay, then we go to first floor. Therefore, the first floor, the principle is going to remain the same. We take the size is going to remain the same. Size for column 2 is the same. Size for column 3 is the same, times the height. Okay, so we proceed. After we've done the ground floor, so this is going to be indicated as a ground floor, or rather, let me just find a way that makes our work easier. So there is going to be, we are going to add here a column. We are going to have here a section that is going to give us the different options of including the rest of the floors under height. Okay, so that instead of including another column altogether, we are going to have just, we can merge all this. Okay, because we need, this is one. So this is going to be for ground floor. So let me just insert here so that I have a different row on top of this. Okay, so just click on where you want it to be inserted, click on it, and then you insert. Okay, so I want it, I've inserted column row number 108. So you click on row number 109, then right click. After right clicking, then you insert, then you will have the other row inserted on top of it. Okay, so at this point of height, I want to now include now this to be ground floor. Okay, so that my work is easier. Okay, I want that to be ground floor, and then I want this to be first floor. Okay, that is another row, another column. Then I want this to be second floor. Then I want this to be third floor. Okay, then I want this to be fourth floor. Okay, so ground, first, second, third, fourth. So let's see if there is we have second floor, we have third floor, we have fourth floor. From fourth floor, there are columns that have got up to fifth floor. So I also need to include another, I also need to add another, this is now third, fourth, also another column for the fifth floor. Okay, so that I have those that will be going up to the fifth floor already have their working done. Okay, so this is fifth floor. If at all that looks very confusing, that this is ground floor, this is okay, let me see if at all. So that is first floor, that is second floor, then this is third floor, then this is fourth floor, that is fourth floor. Okay, then this is now fifth floor. Okay, so that we don't confuse the floors that we've done. So that looks better now. So for our ground floor, we go about consider what we call the height. The height we've just read from our plan. So just to emphasize what we've done so far, we've identified that this is a Storey building consisting of 4 floors. Therefore, when we need to take off or estimate the concrete volume, then we do a column schedule. For the column schedule, it's going to show us the sizes, the types of columns that we have as we've counted them from the plan. And now I've identified that for us to have all the heights indicated here, then what we need is to have a different column for every floor, because there are those columns which are not going complete height. Okay, so column C1, that is the one that we've started with, and we've done for all the columns for ground floor. So we go to the first floor. Then let's just have this here. So ground floor, we consider all the columns are having that height. Then first floor the same, first floor the same, second floor the same, up to third floor. Okay, this is now the third floor. We still have the same heights. Then fourth floor the same. That is where all of them also are typical. So they are typical up to the fourth floor. Okay, so we'll copy this all across up to the fourth floor. Okay, then we do the same. Just highlight that way, and then you just drag it down. Perfect. So we have all the heights indicated. But then at the fifth floor level, this is column C1. Column C1 doesn't reach there. It's not going past the fourth floor. Okay, so the rest of them, that is now column C1, column C2 and C3 is now going up to the fifth floor. So we have the two columns, we have their heights going through up to that particular. So it's only C1 that does not reach there, but C2 and C3 have got heights up to the fifth floor. Okay, so that gives us the total, all the columns that we have from from ground floor to the fifth floor. Okay, so that makes our work even easier. So how do you go about that? Of course, our interest is to get the total volume. From this point, you can now either decide that you have your volume for the columns for ground floor only. Okay, by just taking the volume, then you multiply by all the dimensions, the length and the width and the height for only the first floor, and you are sorted there. Okay, then you can also do the same for first floor, do the same for second floor, third floor, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the easiest way that we can adopt is to have, for instance, in this case we had done the volume, and it was the volume that was only ending at what we call at the ground floor level. Okay, so what we'll do is this. we can consider having this for the volume as well. We can consider having ground floor. Okay, then we can consider also having first floor, just the way they have been arranged. So we can also maybe just copy this so that we have all of them indicated, and then we'll sum them up all together. Okay, so we are done for the ground floor. Okay, so for the first floor is what we are doing next. So everything remains the same in the sense that alternatively, instead of you understand that also in our sessions we try to give some simple shortcuts that will save us a lot of time. So this is one. Okay, instead of having to go one by one in those reference cells, which is going to waste you a lot of time, there is something that you can do that can save you quite a great deal. Look at this formula. This formula is having references. On these references, there are those items that are consistent, that are going to be repeated all through, okay, for this particular case. So you can lock the cells, okay. And now, for instance, I want to lock this the references for H109, I109, and also I want to lock, let me see, just quite fast. I want to lock the sizes, that is the length and the width, and I also want to lock the number, because the height is what is going to be changing. So I want to lock those three cells, H, I, and J. Okay, so how do you do that? Go to this formula, okay, and then you introduce the dollar sign. The dollar sign just before the H and after the H. Okay, so you are locking that H so that that H is going to be consistent. It's not going to move. Even if you drag that formula across, it's not going to change. Okay, so after I've locked that, I also want to lock this one. Just shift, and then yeah, depending on how your keyboard is looking like, when you press on the shift and then 4, in my keyboard I can see the dollar sign coming up. I also want to lock this one, so I'll do the same. I lock it. I do the same for this. I also lock that, and that is done. Okay, so when I do that, there is that is going to be changing, and that which is going to be changing is only the height. So I can now comfortably drag this formula coming all that way. Okay, when I do so, let's see what we have for the volume, if it has worked out, and then you'll compare that with a different working altogether. So let's see. Let's drag it here. There is one that seems to be left out. Let me just confirm. I locked, there is one here that J is the one that was for the number, not K. So I need to release this, and instead of locking that, I lock the J. J is where we have the column for the number, so that you can as well confirm that that is column J. So I need to lock J instead of the K. Okay, so I've locked that. So once I've done so, then I can drag this all through to the other part and see what we have. So now when you do that, this now for the first floor, you can see the rest of the items have remained the same, except column L. It has now moved from K to L. Okay, the same thing has happened when you go to the second floor. The rest, the first three columns have remained the same. Just for an explanation, normally you realize that, let me just undo, and you see what happens when I undo or what I've done. This is the formula before I lock. Let me just go up to the point before I locked those cells. Okay, now these cells are not locked. So So should I drag that formula across for the rest of the floors? You see what happens. Okay, it means every cell is going to be moving from one reference to the other. Okay, so you see some of them are being left out. That's why you can always lock some cells so that it remains constant for the rest of the items. Okay, so I'll just alright, it has gone past what we intended to have. Let me see if it's coming back. Alright, so when I locked them, I locked this one just quite fast. I locked that. I also locked this one. I also locked that one, and also I also locked cell J that way. Okay, so that is what we have. No, there is a problem. That way. Yeah, so you copy that to the rest of the cells, and that is how it looks. Alright, so having said that, then the rest of the items, we consider the rest of the columns the same way that we've handled that one. So we can also lock this one so that it's remaining the same for the rest of the work. So that is one simple way of making sure that you ease your work as much as possible by just simple tips of the Excel. Okay, so I want to do the same for this. That way I come back to this, I do the same, just lock by having that $sign. I also lock this, then I finally lock on this one here. Then you just drag that formula all along, and then it works for you that well. Now what I need to have is now the total volume. Now the total volume is basically the summation, just the sum of this from ground floor to the 5th floor, that way. Then I drag that which I've done here. Okay, then now the total is equals to another sum of all the columns that way. Okay, that was quite straightforward, and that is the best approach that you can give it. So should you wish that you only have the volume of columns for, let me say, the ground floor only, then you just sum that, you get the totals. For the first floor only, you get that. For the second floor only, you get that. Third floor, and so on. So that eases your work and gives you the flexibility of you deciding of exactly how you want to express the total volume for your columns, either per floor or you have it all assorted together. For our sake now, I want is to put all the volume for that column in just in one place. So that gives us a volume of 26 cubic meters. Okay, and we'll consider formwork for the beams. We'll consider the formwork after we've done the concrete for the beams. But for now, what we've done in the columns is just sufficient to call it a session until we meet again in our next session. And I've been confident that what we've covered was quite crucial and would enable you to handle any type of building or any type of block with considerable number of stories that it has. It doesn't matter, the principle remains the same, and what we've done is the simplest way that you would find around of how to handle that estimation. So thank you very much, and I'm confident that this session was worthwhile and you've learned something quite a great deal. So thank you very much. Have a great time till we meet again in our next session that is coming very, very soon. Please, before you leave, kindly subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of the upcoming videos, which are very, very crucial for your growth as a quantity surveyor. Thank you very much. Have a great time till we meet again in our next session. Bye bye.